Hi here. Before we get into the video, I wanted to thank you guys for supporting me. It has been awesome. Unfortunately, I've also been trialing for another guild, so I've been um, doing a lot of in-game stuff, but not as much for YouTube stuff. So guys, let's talk about what happened. It's been about a month since Fire Mage or mages in general got any changes, and now we got these changes. Some of these changes are insane, some of these are not that relevant. If you look at one of these, for instance, it does not change how you play the spec, at least slightly. 90% of the specs are done, maybe one or two changes each, but we're just gonna take a look at the Fire Mage tree first. The first thing that you will notice is overflowing energy, and this is a very interesting talent. As you can see, it says spell critical strike damage is increased by 10%, and as you know, when you are in your combustion window, your crit chance is 100%. So if I'm looking at it right, this is probably like a 10% damage increase. It just depends how long this buff lasts. So let's just fill out the tree and see what we will get. The one thing that I definitely very much love is that you can now pad into Rune of Power almost instantly, as well as these choices. So before coming to 8, you have a decision to make. You can either not take mirror image and have one of these great ones, so you have 3 more points, or you can go with remove curse. It's not that big of a talent, almost universally useless. However, you still want alter time, so it's kind of a toss-up between arcane warding, incantation of swiftness, tempest barrier, or winter protection. One of these you're always gonna be playing, as the middle of the tree is useless. Just like I've said in my video about the mage tree, 90% of this is useless. It doesn't matter what you choose, the only nodes that you want to choose are these stat nodes, as 90% of this is utterly useless. The only thing that I like playing with on beta so far is Blast Wave. Blast Wave is like having a shaman knock on a fire mage. It's just insane in general. And Master of Time. The rest of this tree, besides Shimmer of course, which is a mandatory pick, the rest is situationally useless. Let's just keep it at that. If you're not playing, for instance, on Sylvanas and there are these ads coming in that you need to slow with Ring of Frost, well, if that's not the case, you're not going to play Ring of Frost, basically. Similar situation for Rigid and Frost Nova. These will not see any form of play unless shifting power is that much of a gain where you want to sacrifice these points. So as you can see, we have 16 points here, and there's nothing in this tree that we would even want. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, we might as well just remove Blast Wave and get some actual, I would say, decent points. Arcane Warding is one of those, Incantation of Swiftness is one of those, and then your last point is always gonna be Master of Time. So let's just discuss that a little bit. In my previous video, I've said that 90% of this tree either needs to be reshuffled, or not this tree, but this part of the tree, the middle part of the tree, needs to be reshuffled, or it needs to be fully rechanged, as there were no options to pick. There were options you would pick just because you needed to spend points, but these were not options you wanted. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like Ice Nova, I'm probably never gonna use in any form of content, mainly because Shatter was also removed, so there's not that much need for this, as for instance a Mage of Fire or a Mage of Arcane. I mean, of course, if you're playing a Frost Mage, which I mean, KW. So let's just talk about the last side of the tree then. We're gonna get the Time Warp. This is the current Lost Ring, or the previous Lost Ring from Legion, I believe, but yeah, this one is gonna be insane. And for Mythic Plus, we're gonna choose Dragon's Breath as well as Meteor for giving a slight output. So now we have 2 points again, and as you can see, there is literally nothing you would want. Frigid Winds, useless. Time Manipulation, useless. Discus at GCD does nothing, useless. This one makes our barriers recharge. You know, a specs tree, at least the whole flow or where you would want to spend points is horrendous if you're not going for bottom picks, but instead you're either going for Tempest Barrier or you're going for Diverted Energy just as like a passive. damage decrease. Like that's how bad this is. You have 8 points down here, and you're literally gonna spend either 2 points in the middle or above the tree, literally. Like there's not much difference between these two, and the rest of the tree, it is horrendous. Let's just put it at that. There's not much nice stuff to say about the general tree, just that the middle is still in a abysmal state. Similarly for the end of the tree. For me personally, what I would rather like is if these were not damage options. I would rather wish that we had Cauterize, Cold Snap, and Greater Invisibility. Therefore, you would get 2 of each. Let's say you're an Arcane Mage, you could then play with Cauterize. If you're a Frost Mage, you could play with Greater Invis, and you could play with Cold Snap, for instance. Just that flexibility between those defensive cooldowns at the capstones would be, for me at least personally, a much better experience. Especially because at this very moment, you do not want anything of this left side, because it's not worth spending points on, basically. Similarly for this one, like these points, like these two, I'm happy that they were not 3 points anymore. Being 3 points, these were very limiting in the rest of the tree, but at this moment it is almost done. It just needs like a little bit of a shuffle here. Not really about the top tree, but more about the mid tree. This really needs like a shuffling bed, either actual new talents that excite people to want to pick them, because you're basically picking 4 points from the middle into the top tree, because these are actually changing how you interact with the game or play the game, while some of these are, as you can see, these are not what you would want, of course. Alright, so now let's talk about the fire tree. And the fire tree I'm insanely excited about. There's one change that we can almost immediately notice, and this is that Flame Strike is no longer mandatory if you want to play single target. Assuming we want to play single target, we can ignore Flame Strike. This is, in my opinion personally, amazing. If you don't need to press Flame Strike, you will benefit from it now. That's basically how the change is. So let's just discuss further then. There's a few things that I definitely want to talk about here. The main things that I want to talk about is just how horrendous Blaster Master feels to play on beta. A 3-second damage amp is not gonna fly, at least not in Season 1 till Season 2, I would say. Season 3 we might have enough haste to keep up with this. Maybe there's a cool item that would recharge Fire Blast or something else, similar for tier, but at this very moment this is not a talent you would pick in any form of content, just because the buff itself is cool, like you get damage amp, but the price you have to pay for this is that it's gonna fall off like 50% of the time. So the fact that this is not at this moment a 5 or even higher second buff is just crazy to me. Either they do this, like they change it to a 5-second duration, or they just import Infernal Cascade. I know they don't want to import Infernal Cascade. Infernal Cascade, the conduit itself, is too strong for fire mages, even in this current tier. I do think they probably wanted to nerf that conduit, Infernal Cascade, as it was in Season 1 also nerfed. It was scaling out of control, basically. So I feel that this talent definitely needs a full redesign, or they need to just drop this talent and just give us Infernal Cascade. Infernal Cascade by itself, its base is 5 seconds, and it is also a better damage amp. Just fire damage being increased is 10 times better than just mastery being passively increased. Fortunately, it is percentage based, I think. I'm not sure how the stat weight stuff is gonna interact with that, but that's also a thing. But besides that, there is not much that should get changes. As you can see here, there is just one minor thing that I would really want to change, and that is this middle part of the tree. As you can see, there is only one button you choose in the middle of the tree in its optimal state. This is not a talent, this is not a talent, and this especially, it is not a talent for single target. So what this ends up leading is that there is just one build, and you will play one build only, because there's no variation. There's no, oh, I'm gonna take this path, I'm gonna end up doing this. No, I mean, Living Bomb is dog water. It's the same for From the Ash, Relics Rust. Nobody wants to use. I mean, if this was like baseline, this would make Fire Mages fun to play. I would say, but at the moment, having to spec it into a talent, and it's just not happening. Yeah, like it's not worth a point. Similar for this, it's not worth a point. Even though it's cool, it's not gonna happen. So let's talk then about the backside of the tree. I think this is 90% done. 90% done. Maybe one more shuffle at the bottom. The main thing that I want to discuss, or I would love to talk about, is this choice node. This choice node is probably one of the best design nodes. You either choose between reduction of your Phoenix Flames. If you're playing Phoenix Flames, obviously you do not have to choose Call of the Sun King. You can just not play this and, for instance, drop those points into, perhaps you want Living Bomb. Not that you would want this, of course, but maybe you want Blaster Master to unlock. Not that you want this either. These two definitely need redesigns, but just in case, if you don't want to play the Phoenix Flame build, you can go to the Pyroclasm build, and that in of itself, that's an amazing design choice. Control Destruction is probably one of the best new Fire Mage talents, just because it's an interesting one. And the last points that we have, we can spend on either Blaster Master, or we could spend these on something else. We could spend this on something else entirely. What you could do is you could drop this, and then you would get 2 points into Blaster Master. You would get here, you would get your points here, and then you would get Firefall basically. So there's just a little bit of an annoyance in the Fire Mage tree in and of itself, but it is not the end of the world. Yeah, like this tree is 90% done. As long as these either get reshuffled or redesigned fully, that's when Fire Mage becomes at its peak. Just because you'll always go down middle, and you would always go, if you're playing single target, throughout this route, and if you're AoE, you would go on the right side a little bit more. So yeah, that's the only thing I wish, that Blizzard changed these 3 talents either in something useful or in something that's actually worth investing a point in. Alright, so let's just talk about another mage then. Let's talk a bit about Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage we don't have to discuss at all. Arcane Mage was, just like I said in the last video, 90% done. Now they're 95% done. The only issue is that Orb was all the way down here. Orb being down here meant you could not take it if you want AoE. However, you need Orb if you want to AoE as an Arcane Mage, so that's basically why the spec, it just didn't function at all. However, now that Arcane Orb is up there, it is a lot more, how do I say it, finished. It is still hard stuck carrying Arcane build, which is cringe, right? It's relying on crits, it's relying on all kinds of things, like the boss being on a certain range from you, so your barrage hits on the right timing. Having to spell queue stuff, it's a little bit cringe, this playstyle, but it is a playstyle that has a job basically. It does insane burst AoE, and it does insane funnel damage if there are ads spawning every 45 seconds. So Arcane was not the worst. Frost Mage, I do not want to talk too badly about this spec. However, to call this spec finished would be an insult to any other mage tree, because this tree, I'm not sure what the fuck happened with this tree, but the fact that there are 3 Icy Veins, how do I call it, talents, it just doesn't make any sense for me. If you look at the Fire Mage tree, there's literally one, and you choose that. There's nothing else. There's one other version, it's called Tempered something. Tempered Flames. So you just pick Combustion and Tempered Flames as an interaction or improved combustion. However, if you look at Frost, you have to invest 3 points into Icy Phase. That's just already gonna feel tilting as fuck. And then if you look at your capstones, these capstones do not interest me at all. Like, these are, I mean, Glacial Spike is fun if it works. My fear is just that Glacial Spike is gonna be imbalanced or not highly enough tuned to where you want to pick this. Unless, of course, there are some massive changes in how Glacial Spike interacts with certain stuff. Regardless, if you look at Thermal Void, this has been in the game since forever. It's nothing new. This should already be baked into your class spec, just baseline. Freezing Winds has been decent to play with. As long as they're an orb out, you gain Fingers of Frost. Fingers of Frost obviously is a proc that yeah, it unleashes a flurry 3 times, it does some damage, it slows the movement speed. It's a decent proc, right? You get a proc and you're happy about that. Or this is actually Fingers of Frost. It's like there we go. So like it deals damage as a further target of frost. Yeah, it's a decent proc, but it's not amazing by any stretch. And similar for Goldfront. So I mean, Frostmage still has massive fundamental issues. If I were to talk about this, it would probably take me at least like an hour, because there's just so much to jump into. We can talk about positioning, we can talk about what would be baseline, we can talk about why Blizzard thinks that 3 Icy Vein conduits, or not conduits, talents, are even a viable design choice. Like, there's all these kinds of questions with, yeah, I mean, it would not be that productive, I should say. I mean, just the whole tree can get a full overhaul, and I would not complain, basically. That's just what I would say about that. But yeah, guys, Mage is looking amazing for Dragonflight. It's looking insanely fun, and I hope you guys are able to get beta soon. As well as I want to wish you guys a good day. Thank you for watching.